Welcome in, everybody, to this episode of the Flagship Podcast. I am Chip Brown of Horns247.com, joined as always by my esteemed colleague and proud Tampa Catholic graduate, the one and only Eric Henry of Horns247.com. And we are joined today to preview Texas at Kentucky with Cole Park of the Cat's Paws 247.com. Cole, welcome in, my friend.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Excited to be on another 24/7 network. This is my third time this season. I've gotten to collaborate with some 24/7 reporters since I joined this year, and it's all very exciting.
Hey, well, we are excited to have you, and we're excited to, I don't know how excited Texas is to continue this month away from home after playing at Florida and getting their teeth kicked in, and then going to Dallas and beating Oklahoma. Now they head to Lexington, where they will play at 6 o'clock on Saturday night, Cole. So has Kentucky had any night games at home yet this season?
Yeah, this will be the this will be the third. They played Eastern Michigan at night, and
The Hurons.
Yeah. Oh, that's the only one at home. The South Carolina game was a night game, but that was on the road. So the only one so far was Eastern Michigan at home for their final non-conference game of the first half of the season. They're all littered all throughout now. They're not all at the same time anymore. So played that one at home at night, and then they'll have Texas, and then they already announced that the next week Tennessee will be a 7:45 kick in Lexington.
Okay. So for the fans who are making the trip, what's the tailgate scene like? Any recommendations for their Lexington experience?
Yeah, there's actually a pretty big tailgating scene here in Lexington, kind of all around. You can see the football stadium. Plenty of people, especially for these night games. They'll get there 8 a.m. and just set up and be there all day long, watching games all day long, cooking, cornhole, drinks. It's a lot of fun. If you have an opportunity to kind of just walk around for a little while, might get some I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but some pushback for wearing anything Texas. But no, people are pretty nice. I've seen people, even opposing fans just find people who are tailgating, and then they just invite them to hang out for the day, spend some time. It's a good atmosphere, and it's a good environment, and I think it's a lot of fun.
They'll share some of their moonshine with the Horn fans.
Sure, if you can find it.
All right, Eric.
Yeah,
you can lead us into the football conversation, or wherever you want to take this conversation.
We're going to get to football. We're going to get to football, but I'm going to hope I can endear myself. And as Chip led off with, he is the solo representative for Horns 24/7, going out, only sending one to Kentucky and Mississippi State. Chip will be heading to Lexington. I will be heading to Starkville. But I hope to endear myself to Wildcat fans just a little bit. I want to piggyback. Chip talked about the tailgate scene is like, Cole, what is the stadium atmosphere like? Because at Kroger Field, I will share one memory of the former Commonwealth Stadium. I remember, and this is a very dated reference, so you probably have to be 10, 15 years old, dating this reference. Andre Woodson to Stevie Johnson. I mean, you talk about two guys in Kentucky Wildcat lore. I remember watching those games on TV growing up in Florida, Cole, and that was the Rich Brooks era when Kentucky, Commonwealth Stadium looked like it's pretty hopping. I guess I'm just curious, kind of segue off of Chip's question. Night game coming in, is this going to be an atmosphere? It's like, man, this is, for lack of a better phrase, like Kentucky Super Bowl. They'll be fired up to have Texas in town. And what will the atmosphere be like in the stadium?
That's a good question. I think the stadium atmosphere is definitely a lot better when the team is successful, which they have not been the last 2 years. I think one of my best memories, when I was a student at UK, I think it was 2021, whenever they beat Florida in Lexington with the blocked field goal. Florida was ranked like number 10. I mean, that atmosphere was insane. It was rowdy. They rushed the field after the game. It was a lot of fun. And I'm not really sure what to. I would expect early on it'll probably be pretty solid. If Texas starts to, score a touchdown or two, it might start to clear out a little bit. And I also think that you have to take into account, basketball's getting started. You'll have the blue-white basketball game exhibition the night before. Big Blue Madness was last week. And then there's a lot of people that are quite unhappy with Mark Stoops right now. So I would definitely say the atmosphere is going to be a bit worse than it would be a few years ago. But I still give confidence in Big Blue Nation to show out and make it a fun atmosphere, at least early on, if Texas doesn't pull away.
All right, I got two more real quick. I was going to go into Cutter Bowling, who, of course, Texas fans should be very familiar with. He played the majority of the game when Texas won last year. Brock Vandergriff, I believe, started that game, if memory serves me correct, but Cutter Bowling played most of the game. But you kind of went into an area that I was going to ask, just what is the feeling around Mark Stoops, of course, a veteran head coach at Kentucky. Steve Sarkisian, during his Monday press conference, very complimentary of Mark Stoops, which is not out of the ordinary, for our audience. If you recall, Steve is typically very complimentary of the opposing head coach, but especially someone who's been doing it a long time. Steve has a lot of respect for the guys in coaching business. So he's very complimentary, said all the right things about, a Mark Stoops coach team. They're going to come in, they're going to fight hard, all those things that seemingly, Chip will get a kick out of this. You say when a team isn't talented enough to beat you, say they're going to come in, they're going to fight hard and all those things. But what's the tenor around Lexington with Mark Stoops?
Yeah, I mean, what you just said there is kind of the story of Kentucky, isn't it? I mean, it was Kentucky's coming off a bye week, but before that they played at Georgia, and a lot of fans were annoyed because Kirby Smart was praising Mark Stoops, saying, "Oh, Kentucky always plays us close. They're very physical. They're one of our more physical matchups." And I was like, "Of course he's going to praise Mark Stoops. He's never lost to him. Doesn't matter how physical these games are. He's never lost to him." So, it's kind of, I think a lot of people are very frustrated with that. Like, yeah, you can get praise for being a physical, gritty kind of football team. You can get praise for always being in games that arguably you shouldn't be in. But at some point in time, you're going to have to win those games. And they're just not doing that. And now they're even to the point where they're losing games that they probably shouldn't be losing. You look at this year's schedule and the amount of quality teams on it, or teams that are capable of getting big wins. I mean, Kentucky could easily, turn this around, get close to bowl eligibility, maybe finish 6-6 or something like that this year, but just as easily could go 3-9 or 4-8 again. It's very possible that you could be looking at a second straight 4-8 season. And if you're looking at that schedule and don't see an SEC victory that just jumps out at you the way you got one at Ole Miss last year, which insane. If you don't see another one of those that you just happen to pick off, then 3-9 is your best bet, and that includes a win over FCS Tennessee Tech, who it's FCS. So you're an SEC school, you should beat them, but Tennessee Tech's also undefeated right now and ranked in the top 10 of the FCS. So it's more akin to a South Dakota State than it is a Morehead State that you'll play on a random basis. So that's not great. You got Louisville, at the end of the year in the Governor's Cup, and there's just not a lot of opportunities to get a lot of wins. I think people are very fed up. People, were frustrated after last year's 4-8 campaign, broke a streak of, I want to say 8 straight bowl games. But I think that'd be a little bit disingenuous to say last year was the first sign of issues. There were issues after that. You had your second 10-win season under Stoops, I believe in 2021, which has since been vacated, actually. None of those wins count anymore. That's now an 0-3 season. But you had your second 10-win season, and then you bring back Will Levis, a guy that's expected to be a first-round NFL draft pick quarterback. You bring back all these guys, all this talent. People were talking about going to Atlanta. They were talking about SEC championships, which, maybe that was out of the realm of possibility anyway. But, who's going to tell a fan what is and isn't possible, right? And then you end that year with some disappointing losses, and you go 7-5. So you load back up, you get another shot at it, and you go 7-5 again. And then that is followed up by 4-8. And I think people have kind of felt like this is, it's kind of one of those deals where most people are in the camp of, I appreciate Mark Stoops. He did things at Kentucky football I didn't believe anyone else would do in the modern era, but I don't see this getting better, and it's run its course. The only matter, that teeny little matter in the that's a bit of a fork in the road, is something like $40 million standing in the way of, has this run its course or not. I think it's closer to 38, 39, but regardless, it's a lot of money for. And another important note, James Franklin's firing didn't help matters, especially with how many coaching openings there are this year around the sport. And there could be several more by the end of the year that open up, including some in our conference. But a difference there that's pretty key is while Franklin was owed more money by Penn State than Kentucky owes Mark Stoops, Franklin's payment is going to be over time, whereas Mark Stoops is owed upfront. So that's basically $38-39 million upfront from the time, like within 60 days of him being terminated, if that were to be the case. But, there was a report that came out that Mark Stoops might be looking at walking away after the Georgia game. He shoots that down immediately, says, I don't want to talk about any of that anymore. That's not true. Anyone who says I don't want to be here, he said, I'm not walking away, 0% chance. So it's kind of where things are at right now, and it's not great.
Cole, Kentucky typically is known for its defense. Of course, Mark Stoops, a defensive guy. The defense is struggling more than we've seen from Kentucky in the past. They're giving up 153.6 yards per game on the ground. They're giving up 27.8 points per game. And they're 102nd in third down defense. What's going on with the Kentucky defense?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of factors there. I mean, this is a defense that you have to say lost a lot last season. Even in spite of last season's poor performance, there were some really talented players in that team. Maxwell Harrison and Deion Walker, both on the Bills. Fingers crossed on Max finally getting cleared from his injury soon. He still hasn't played a game for them, but Deion's been playing pretty well. You had a couple guys who played pro other places, and then a couple guys who were just kind of career Wildcats that didn't have a pro career that moved on from their time. I would say when you look at Kentucky's defense right now, there's several key issues in what's going on there. One, I would say that I like the guys who are there. I think that they're great, mentally. I think that they're great guys and they can make big plays, but I would also say that Kentucky's weaker at linebacker than it has been in quite a while. And we've heard a lot about the DBs before the season and how good that room could be. Some of that they're having to make up for some plays the linebackers aren't making. Other times, I think Brad White said it after the South Carolina game. He's like, if we played, 72 plays, 65 of them might be really, really good. But the 7 that aren't are the ones that we give up explosive plays that come back and get you. I mean, there was that curl route against South Carolina, which I thought the defense didn't play bad against South Carolina. It looks bad with 35 points, but 21 of those came off of offensive turnovers, which is insane to say. And even in spite of that, even in spite of one of your best performances of the season, you still had a curl route that went for like 54 yards because you just weren't in position. You weren't where you needed to be. You got bad angles on the football. I think that this defense just isn't clicking in a lot of ways. There's a lot of issues. Tackling's been a big issue, but when asked about it during the bye week, Mark Stoops kind of pushed back on just saying like we need to tackle more in practice, and kind of said, well, I mean, if you want to be honest with it, a lot of it's been our placement on the ball. We haven't been where we need to be. We haven't been getting the angles we need to get, and that's a tough spot to be. I would say that I'm not going to just go on a full-on say it, but I think there's a case to be made that this is one of Brad White's weaker defenses he's ever had at Kentucky. And that's not necessarily due to a lack of talent. I think there are good guys in this defense and guys who are capable of doing big things, but right now it's just, like you said, not clicking. The numbers aren't lying to you. It's been bad. And against Georgia, it was pretty bad. The offense has been a struggle all season long. It's kind of overshadowed a lot of that, but the offense looked like it was actually making some strides down in Athens, which is weird to say. But the defense just, you can go back and watch that first drive Georgia scored. It just looked way too easy. It was a pedestrian drive for Georgia, and they just marched pretty much the length of the field to get in the end zone, and it just was way too easy to start off the game.
Well, what happened in that Ole Miss game? Because they did play Ole Miss to a one-score game in Lexington. And it does seem like Kentucky always rises up and gets somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one that played a lot closer than some people might have thought it did. Lane Kiffin was putting a lot of stock into that one. Obviously, it really bothered Lane losing in Oxford last season. He
cost him a playoff spot.
It did, didn't it? And he was pretty upset about that. I was talking to the Ole Miss reporter, and he's like, I'm more worried about Arkansas game because I'm worried they're putting so much focus on Kentucky that they're going to fall into a trap game there. And they very nearly did. Not enough to save Pittman his job, but they very nearly did. But that's just I feel like if there's so many things that have gone wrong for Kentucky football this season, and one of the biggest things that's worked against Kentucky football this season has been Kentucky football. I mean, they've shot themselves in the foot over and over and over again. And I thought the Ole Miss game was a big example of that. I mean, the offense just couldn't really seem to get going in the passing game when you needed it to. There were some costly plays there that just needed to be better. And then obviously towards the end there, Zach Calzada going out with his injury to his shoulder, of which he, is seemingly back and healthy now, but still hasn't played after losing his spot to Cutter Boley with the injury. Cutter Boley kind of gets thrown in there late at the end and misses some plays, misses something. I mean, it's another situation where he's a redshirt freshman and still hadn't started a game by that point. And an SEC game, I should clarify, he did start against Murray State last year, so high praise. But it was a tough situation, and Kentucky played close, like you said, but it kind of felt like Kentucky was playing Ole Miss and itself at times. And at the end of the day, I had a coach used to say this to me, the other team's coming in there to beat you. So son, don't help them, and Kentucky helped them. And ultimately cost themselves that one.
Cole, how has Cutter Boley grown from last year to this?
I think it's very noticeable how improved he is. I think last year, you could tell he was very, very green. And even early this year, you could tell he was green. It kind of reminds me a little bit, not to the same level, but I think Texas can almost sympathize a little bit with Arch Manning. When Zach Calzada was struggling, whenever things weren't going super well at the offensive beginning, there's a lot of people who had this mindset of just put Cutter Boley in there. Cutter Boley is going to save everything. Cutter Boley is going to be great and have it all figured out. The same when people were giving Arch Manning the Heisman in the preseason and saying this guy is going to be the guy. And then you throw him out there and against a quality opponent, whether that's an Ohio State, a bit more quality than South Carolina, but regardless, a quality opponent. And it's like, oh, wait, no, this is a young quarterback who needs actual time to develop and grow. And sometimes there are some growing pains with that. So, the South Carolina game was not great for Cutter Boley. He had 2 interceptions, a fumble that was scooped and scored, sacked 6 times. Not all of those were the offensive line's fault, just holding onto the football way too long, making some bad reads. But, it's something that the coaches said. They said he's a redshirt freshman. He never started in a game before, in an SEC game before, and we start him at South Carolina. That's a tough place to play, even when South Carolina is not as good. So you go into the Georgia game, and he wasn't perfect by any means, no doubt about it, but he looked a lot better. He got sacked twice against Georgia, and one of those was pretty late in the game when it didn't really matter. He had 1 interception, but feels like I'm nitpicking here, but I would say it's one of the most forgivable interceptions in football. 4th down, you're on the scramble. It's a goal line stand, 4th down. The game's already over. You're kind of just scrambling, looking for something, and you try to throw it out the back of the end zone to give a turnover on downs, and they get a toe tap in the end zone. Like, okay, it's a touchback, whatever, who cares? Move on to the next play. The result of the play was nothing anyway. But he looked a lot better. He looked much improved. He looked more confident. After the game, I spoke with him and he said, I really liked the way the game was called. I felt comfortable. I felt confident, and the offense looked probably better than it has at any point this season over the span of that Georgia game. And again, there were still some drives that stalled out. There were still some plays that need to be made. But overall, you looked at that Georgia game and you're like, okay, Kentucky might not be just really bad offensively all year long. They might have a chance at getting something going here if they can keep up this momentum with the pass game, with the run game. We saw a few things that were working that hadn't been working before. So it was good to see.
What about Seth McGowan? I mean, it looks like he is the alpha dog on this offense. Talk about the Kentucky running game.
Yeah, absolutely. Seth's been fantastic. Obviously, he's taken a step back in recent games. He's kind of been a little bit banged up, but at one point in the time, he was on pace to score or to break multiple records at Kentucky. I don't know that he's still on pace to break some of those records, but he's still on pace to have a phenomenal season. And, he's been really, really good. Coming out of his story, first of all, is phenomenal. Goes to Oklahoma, gets into some legal troubles, has to go down and play at a community college, then transfers to New Mexico State. And Kentucky football's running back coach, Jay Boulware, had known him the whole time. He brings him in to Kentucky, and he's performed on every level. Obviously, part of the running back duo with Dante Dowdell. Been a bit more explosive than Dante Dowdell, has the 6 touchdowns, I believe. Pretty insane to say. He has more than anything else in the team, including the entire passing offense combined. Now, I would say he's a bit of a concern going into this week. Obviously, he was a bit banged up after South Carolina, plays a little bit hurt against Georgia. We saw that the run game wasn't as effective as you wanted it to be against Georgia, and then obviously implemented more in the pass game in that one. And we've heard that he was a little bit rattled after that one. Last week, the report we got is that he should be back for this week. This week, we spoke to Mark Stoops yesterday, and we heard that DJ Waller's probably going to be back, but with Seth, the answer we got was Seth will be close. I heard that he did not practice yesterday, so we'll see where Seth McGowan is at come time to play Texas. But obviously, he's dealing with trying to heal up from some injury issues there, and hopefully, he's able to get going against Texas because he has been phenomenal all season. And there's been multiple games this year where it felt like he was kind of the lone bright spot for the Wildcat offense.
Do we know what that injury is?
I do not have a specific for you. Working on getting that today, most likely, but generally just, I think it's just wear and tear, just been worn down. He had I think he had an ankle thing in the summer. It might've been re-aggravated in some of those tackles, especially some of those wrap-ups. But yeah, he was in a boot during fall camp and then comes back ready to go and just has been taking a bunch of hits to the lower body at South Carolina, at Georgia. So that would be my guess. I'm going to try to get a confirmation on that today.
Cole,
Eric, you got one more?
Yeah, I mean, combine them here together, Chip. Cole, if Kentucky's going to make this a game, what will need to happen? How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want this to be a game, the biggest thing you're going to need to see is you need your offense to continue on the same kind of trajectory it did against Georgia. And more importantly, you need your defense to match it. If you want to make this a game with Texas, you can't really get behind the way you did at Georgia. You can't go down 14-0 early on. I mean, this Kentucky team, I've talked about it plenty, but this Kentucky team is not a team that's built to make big comebacks. And that, that's not a knock. Certain teams just aren't built that way, but this team is one of them. It's not built to come back from down multiple scores. It can theoretically do it. We haven't seen it this year. So this is a team that needs to, probably set the tone, whether it's on offense or defense early, get a stop, maybe try to score a point and keep this game close, keep this game level. If you go down one score, okay, you can tie that. But if you go down two scores, that's when I kind of start to be like, this one might be a wash. So the defense is going to need to keep it close, keep the offense in the game, and the offense is going to need to keep making some of those strides it made against Georgia, keep the passing game potent, keep getting wide receivers open for the first time like we've seen all season. Keep the running backs in the passing game as well if they're both healthy. They made some big plays there too. So keep that going, and try to score some points. And if anything, the thing I'm looking forward to the most, if Kentucky is going to be successful, is seeing a better defense performance, because that's where I think things really fell flat in Athens. And not that Kentucky was ever going to go into Georgia and beat them after they just lost their home winning streak to Alabama, of all teams. That was just a brutal time to get Georgia, if there ever was a good time to get Georgia. But the defense didn't really do them any favors. And in playing a team like Texas that will punish those mistakes that you make, you're going to need to keep it close the entire game and hope that you can pull one away late with your offense and not, just need to be in a big comeback situation.
So, Cole, what's your prediction for this one?
I'm going to go. I predict Texas will win it first and foremost. If you want my score prediction, I'm going to go 26-17. Why not?
Okay. Well, listen, man, we really appreciate your insight into the Wildcats program. And I know Texas fans who've never been to Lexington, that's horse farm country. All those big white, not picket fences, but whatever they call them, horse fences. Yeah, no idea what I'm talking about. And they also have good bourbon in Kentucky.
Dude, I got several bottles up on the shelf behind me.
So I know Texas fans are going to be excited to try some of that Kentucky bourbon. You know what I'm saying? Cole, really appreciate it. Everybody get over to catspaws.com, the Kentucky site on the 24/7 Sports Network. Cole, see you Saturday.
See you Saturday.
Appreciate it, Cole.
Appreciate it, man. All right, Eric Henry, we are rolling on here with the Flagship Podcast. Good conversation there with Cole Park. But we got some Texas football to talk. The Longhorns have spoken. We heard from Steve Sarkisian, the players, yesterday. Eric. And I think what Texas fans want to know is, how can Texas sustain the momentum and build off of what they put on display in that 23-6 win over Oklahoma? I got to say, my focal point has been on the offense quite a bit, because the offense was holding this team back through the first 3 games of the season. But Eric, I feel like, well, first of all, kudos to Steve Sarkisian for moving to a quick passing game. That totally worked. It flummoxed the pass rush hungry Oklahoma defense. It got Arch Manning into a rhythm. He was 15 of 15 on passes 5 yards or shorter. And the offense was able to get into third and manageable and then convert. And it just feels to me, Eric, like Arch Manning is settled down. He's now part of the solution. He's not part of the problem. And it sounds, I mean, he looks and sounds like a different quarterback than he was at, let's just take the Ohio State game. Your thoughts?
Good morning, Chip. I'm gonna, filibuster for a little bit before I answer that question. I'm still recovering, trying to regain my composure from Chip talking about the horse fences out there. Horse fences in Lexington. I'm definitely looking forward to whenever I make the trip out to Lexington, seeing some of those. Sorry, I gave you a little bit of a chuckle there. Also, I will say this. For those who enjoyed the Red River Shootout, hopefully you had a better Red River Shootout than I did, because I was the victim of some vandalism down there in downtown Dallas. Lost a rear passenger side window. It was smashed out. So if you saw a car in the parking lot of the Texas State Fair with plastic on it, that was yours truly. So
the old trash bag window.
The old trash bag window, recovering from that. That aside.
I mean, Eric, you've had a rough go of it with cars the last 2 weeks. You had an electric car in Florida.
Correct.
And that was a nightmare because you couldn't find charging stations. And then you just had straight thievery. I know the Oklahoma Sooners are land thieves. They don't need to be thieves of cars. You know what I mean?
Memo to anyone watching: do not take your girlfriend's car to the Red River Shootout when she's in Vegas and then have to explain to her that her window has been smashed out. Said girlfriend, who is not from Texas, she's from Indianapolis, so she is not a Texas fan and was not sued by the fact that the Longhorns won, because she could care less. All she cared about was her car. I digress. Chip, to your point, I think there's a lot to touch on there. Let's start here with this. We talk about Texas's offense keeping momentum. Chip, I'm going to give you one guess at who Mark Stoops' agent is.
Jimmy Sexton.
You know it's Jimmy Sexton. That's how that man has that type of buyout with a defense that is ranked 96th in the nation in points per game allowed. The Wildcats are allowing 27.8 points per game, as Cole said when we had him on. That is going to be the biggest key, Chip, to Texas's offense keeping its momentum. This is not a Florida game, all right? I respect what Steve Sarkisian said in his Monday presser. He needs to keep that tone, right? Mark Stoops, good coach, good coaching staff, solid. They're going to be physical. He needs to keep that tone because his Longhorn club went to Florida and were out physical, right? They can't afford another slip up. With that being said, this team is not Florida. For whatever struggles you want to say of the Gators, they recruit better talent. They are a more talented team. Quite frankly, they were a better defense than Kentucky is right now. So I think that is going to be key more than anything else, Chip, to keeping this offense on rhythm. As to Arch Manning, listen, I am not going to try and sit here and play revisionist history, right? I did feel that after the UTEP game, specifically the UTEP game, there was plenty of room for Arch Manning to take, some steps forward in his game. However, with that being said, I never solely felt that the issue was Arch Manning. I've been consistent, and I think Chip has been as well, in saying that the offense as a whole needed to take strides, right? So Steve Sarkisian will say, all right, last week we were the worst, right? I won't use the 4-letter word that he used post-game. I can't, because we got to keep this a PG podcast. But he said, hey, everyone's going to say we're the worst. Now they're going to say we're the best. It doesn't have to be that hard of a shift, right? Chip, it was still a 6-3 game. at halftime, right? So there is room to grow. You did a great job writing about Texas's third quarter, and if that can be the launching point for some, consistent play from this offense, I think it's going to need to be. But I think the one thing I wrote about it on Saturday, and you talked about it here, the evolution of the quick passing game. Chip, there is no doubt that that was the difference in keeping Texas out of third and long, out of second and forever, right? That and not committing penalties. Those will be the two things Texas needs to do in order. And quite frankly, I think the mix of the short passing game helped open up things for Quintravion Wiseman, right? He had a nice game, both as a rusher and a receiver, Chip. I think we saw him using the quick passing game, getting him out there, allowing him to work in space. I think you'll see more of that on Saturday.
Yeah, Quintravion Wiseman was a warrior for Texas in that Red River shootout, and we know that he has been battling through a hamstring injury. He took a big shot to his ribs where he went airborne, had to come out of the game. He played through it, and they needed him. They needed him. And there's good news, we think. We're hearing that CJ Baxter will be back and ready to go, be available for this game against Kentucky. So we'll see how that goes. Texas has not had its full complement of running backs since the Ohio State game. Because after Ohio State, Quintravion Wiseman missed 3 games. Then CJ Baxter goes out after the first play of the UTEP game. And you had open auditions with, Christian Clark, Jared Gibson, and James Simon. And it's clear that Quintravion Wiseman, who has 11 forced missed tackles on the season, and 6 of them came in the OU game. That tells you, A, Texas needs more of that, running backs breaking tackles to make extra yards. And B, Quintravion Wiseman, with his experience, his ability to catch the football, huge. Because you're right, Eric, he had a big third down catch on a third down conversion as Texas, built that 20-0 second half shutout. So good stuff there. And I think Arch Manning, he was asked about the article by the New York Times, The Athletic, questioning if he's college football's first flop. And he said, I didn't know what was going on. I was getting all these text messages saying, continue to block out the noise. So he's like, there must be a lot of noise out there. And then when he was asked if he knew it was about this article calling him a flop, he was like, I did not know that. Now I do. But hey, everyone's got their opinion. He's like, I wasn't playing well early in the year. Everyone's got their opinion. It's America, freedom of speech. It doesn't bother me. Eric, what'd you make of Arch Manning on the criticism and that hit piece by the New York Times?
It's par for the course for Arch Manning. I would expect nothing less, whether it's the answer about, American freedom of speech, or if it's just, hey, not hearing it. That's Arch Manning to a T. So I would expect nothing less there. It's the demeanor you'd expect from your quarterback, right? And quite frankly, you can say this. We've said this a million times. I don't know how many more ways you can say it, right? If you are Arch Manning, that's kind of the world you have to live in, right? When you can't go. Chip, I think we were talking about this. I can't remember if it was after the San Jose State game or the UTEP game. It was one of the non-conference games, the Group of 5 non-conference games. And then I said, Arch Manning can't go watch a baseball game, right? Let's just make him a hypothetical. If he's a baseball fan, he turns on ESPN, right? There's going to be a cut in the Sports Center talking about Arch Manning, right? You can't turn on, insert national sports show. Just like, all right, I don't give. There's Arch Manning, right? Arch Manning was talked about even during the bye week. It was Arch Manning. It's like, what's there to talk about during the bye week? The Texas didn't play, right? So it is kind of the proverbial fishbowl you have to live in if you are Arch Manning. So again, his answer didn't surprise me. It was on par.
Yeah, the candy is out of the piñata. He is on the rebound now because it seemed like everybody landed their punches after the Florida game. And that was a Florida game where he actually played pretty well.
Right.
Stood strong in the pocket, took some huge shots, was still trying to make plays down the field, but that was down the field. Meanwhile, DJ Lagway is on one leg using the same quick passing game that Arch Manning used to beat Oklahoma. So Steve Sarkisian deserves some scrutiny for how Arch Manning started or played in that Florida game for sure. And Eric, Malik Muhammad.
Chip, real
See,
quick,
the most valuable.
before you transition from Manning, I would love to get your thought on one thing super quick that was said in the presser. Steve Sarkisian talked about Arch Manning's ability to roll out of the pocket and extend plays and kind of freelance, right? That Demo, his touchdown, it was a play where you be football IQ, adjust the route. Chip, was that noticeable to you on Saturday? Because that was noticeable to me, and I think that could be a strength of Arch Manning's game. I would love your thoughts on that real quick.
Yeah, no, it's they have to roll him, and thank God he can make plays. He can throw on the move. This is something that Colt McCoy was exceptional at, and he did not have a great offensive line in 2009, especially when they played for the national championship. Arch Manning is doing a really good job of pocket movement, pocket awareness, and getting outside the pocket when he has to, keeping his eyes downfield and making plays. I thought one of the biggest plays was he's rolling to his left and he kind of throws back to his right to Ryan Wingo, who had sat down in an open spot in the Oklahoma defense, and they converted a third down there. I think Arch Manning is really dealing right now. Like he's feeling it. He's out of his head. He's now focused in on the defense and what they're trying to do. He's not worried if he's going to skip a pass, from 6 yards away, like we saw in the Ohio State game. So, yeah, that's a real weapon, Eric. They can roll him left. They can roll him right. That helps a beleaguered offensive line that actually played with more confidence as the Oklahoma game went on because, Contravian Wisner ran for 37 yards, the first run of 20 or more yards by a running back this season comes in game 6. But the offensive line, which the grades were wild. I mean, you had DJ Campbell and Brandon Baker probably play their best games as Longhorns. And then Gooseby was good. Cole Hudson and Nick Brooks, struggle bus. So, but Nick Brooks got better as the game went on, and they like his energy and they like his juice. So that's going to be really important for this Texas offense because if he's a guy who's a green banana and he's growing into being a nice ripe, or just you're green and growing. You can't be a veteran who's making mistakes and, bringing the team down with your inability to get to a next play attitude, next play mindset. Nick Brooks, they like his energy, they like his juice, and they're willing to grow with him. And so far, so good. We'll see how he handles Kentucky, Eric.
No, I agree with you there. And I think, we talked about a little bit in specificity to Nick Brooks in the post game, right? ESPN. I leaned over and showed you in the press box, right? That, or ABC, when the game was broadcast, leaned over and showed you in the press box, the early montage of Nick Brooks' mistakes, right? That's tough for a 19-year-old kid, freshman, starting his first Red River shootout, and all of a sudden, Chip, he's looked at as the weak link, right? I'm not going to, go too long on this, but it's something that kind of caught my attention in that moment. With all of the attention that comes with Arch Manning in Texas, Chip, this team, whatever weakness is there, it then is magnified even more so, right? Call me a conspiracy theorist, but I wonder if this is another quarterback who's not Arch Manning, does it get pointed out? Oh, Nick Brooks, right? Here's the reason the offense isn't working, right? It just was like the magnifying glass on Texas is so large right now, and so much of that, in my opinion, comes with Arch Manning. Not all, because they were the preseason #1 team in the nation, but so much of it, Chip. And I know you'd start to ask me, sorry, before I interjected with Arch Manning rolling out, but you were going to ask him about Malik Muhammad, and I think, I'll let you kind of segue off of me, but no, Manny Muhammad's play, Chip, I think is huge. We talked about this a little bit, throughout the preseason and going into the season. I don't think the expectation is that Manny Muhammad has to be Jahdae Barron, right? Jahdae Barron had one of the all-time great defensive seasons in Longhorn program history. And I am no Longhorn program historian. I've only been here 3 seasons, but I don't think I have to be here 100 years to know that was a hell of a season Jahdae Barron had, being Jim Thorpe an All-American, right? However, I did think it was key that we get the best version of Manny Muhammad. You've heard Steve Sarkisian kind of say that in his own way, right? Challenging him to be the best version of him, that guy that they recruited. And as Texas kind of, gets into the meat of their SEC schedule, maybe post Kentucky, no disrespect to Mark Stoops' club, they're going to need Manny Muhammad to be that guy, Chip.
Yeah, for sure. 2 interceptions, a pass breakup, and that interception, I'll blame that last interception in the first half, Malik Muhammad's second interception, on Brent Venables. What horrible clock management. He let 23 seconds run off the clock, then calls a timeout with 10 seconds left in the half. They're at the 30-yard line. Now it's dicey. So John Mateer tries to make the big play instead of making the smart play. And he's running to his right. He throws back to his left. It's not an accurate pass. And Manny Muhammad picks it off. And that was really the beginning of the end for OU. Of course, we know Texas outscored OU 20-0 in the second half. Eric, one more thing. We talked about Arch Manning pressing early and now looking like he's, out of his head and focused on the defense and making plays and part of the solution. Colin Simmons also fell into that category early on. And he talked yesterday. He said, I was trying to make every play at the beginning of the season. I was forcing it. I was just not observing the game and letting the game come to me. Over the last couple games, he was really good against Florida. Really good in a bad loss for the Longhorns. Colin Simmons was really good. And then he comes back against OU, back in his hometown. He's from Duncanville, and gets 2.5 sacks. This is big, Eric, because 2 of their best players, their biggest stars, were not performing well in the first 3 games of the season. Now it looks like they've both figured some things out.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly, 100%. We did our roundtable Sunday, and we talked about a breakout player for Texas. A lot of people are excited about Lance Jackson and Brad Spence, and with good reason. Steve Sarkisian mentioned in his Monday presser about the depth at edge that is starting to show itself. There's good reason to be excited about those guys. However, this is no disrespect, Chip, to Lance Jackson and Brad Spence. There's only one Colin Simmons. All right. And again, I'm not saying that those 2 guys, Brad Spence, impact player, Arkansas, Lance Jackson, really talented young guy. Colin Simmons' ceiling is immense. What did MJ say, right? The ceiling is the roof. I love that phrase. I wonder if that was something Michael Jordan planned on saying. This came out, and it came out wrong, because the ceiling is the roof is just equal parts hilarious and ridiculous. Nevertheless, the ceiling is the roof for Colin Simmons. The reason I chose him as my breakout player is because of what you just said. It was clear he was pressing, right? You didn't need to be Alan Clark. You didn't need to be a football savant to see this guy was out there trying to do everything. And again, I always reference, I covered Group of Fives for 6 years. I have a lot of respect for the players at that level. Colin Simmons didn't get a sack against Group of 5 competition, or half a sack. That shouldn't happen. He is, again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. He wakes up more talented than 99% of tackles he will face at that level, and should fall out of bed and get 2 sacks against Sam Houston, San Jose State, and UTEP, right? So the fact that didn't happen was very clear that he was pressing. To see Colin kind of just play his game. Chip, he's so athletic. His first step is so instinctual. It'll come naturally. He doesn't have to do anything more outside of be Colin Simmons and build on that type of athleticism and potential. So, I can 1,000% agree. And to the point that you were making, Steve Sarkisian said he wants to see his team play its best football in November and December, right? You know, it'd be really huge in those efforts. All of a sudden, adding an All-American edge, right, in Colin Simmons, because he wasn't playing like an All-American before. But if you get that guy now, that's huge.
Yeah, yeah. I agree, and I think he's playing much more physical. He's going through people now instead of trying to go around them. He is taking on blocks. He's shedding and playing the run, which was the weak part of his game. Let's be honest. Teams would test him. They're going to run at him. As he said, I'm 240. People are going to run at me. But he's holding up, and that's key, because he and Ethan Burke are clearly the best edge setters for Texas against the run. And as you pointed out, Lance Jackson is going to be a stud, but he'll peek inside every once in a while and get caught. Jaden Baugh got outside of him a couple times in that Florida game. And Lance Jackson will learn, because he's 6'5", 265. Like, God was in a good mood when he put Lance Jackson together. So he's going to be, a great player for them, and that's a good sign as well. Eric, couple other nuggets. Michael Taft said, I can't wait to see what they say about us when we go 1-0 against Oklahoma. I thought Michael Taft really played inspired football. I mean, he was throwing his body around and came up with a sack. How about this? Here's a factoid for our fans and listeners. Anthony Hill played more coverage snaps against Oklahoma than Michael Taft. Like, I'm getting a little tired of Anthony Hill dropping 20 yards into coverage. I'm seeing this way too much. But Eric, I don't know if they're trying to show the NFL that Anthony Hill can play in coverage or what, but man, I miss seeing that guy around, coming off the edge, playing up in the box. What's with all these coverage snaps for Anthony Hill?
I mean, listen, you're talking about a guy who is versatile and can do those things. But to your point, and I thought we saw a little bit. I remember in the press box point out to you a couple of times, like, hey, there's Anthony Hill on a pass rush, right? I do agree, his strength, right, is being a game wrecker, playing behind the line of scrimmage. I can understand, again, Chip, if, the thought process entering the season is this, right? We believe we can generate pressure with our front four, so much so that it allows us to utilize Anthony Hill's versatility in a variety of ways. I can get on board with that. However, yeah, I would say this. You want to see players' games evolve, but even the game that stands out to me, Chip, was Alabama as a true freshman, right? How many times we hear Anthony Hill say and others say he didn't really know what he was doing. He just was playing with his hair on fire and going to make plays, right?
Two third down sacks.
There is an element of that just is natural within Anthony Hill's game that you got to just use.
Yeah. One other nugget before we get to take it or leave it. Ryan Niblett. So he will go down in Texas football Red River Shootout lore for his 75-yard punt return for a touchdown. OU fans are griping about a missed block in the back. It looked like they were just doing some screening. I didn't see hands extended, but anyway, Ryan Niblett, he could have transferred. He was looking at transferring. Steve Sarkisian said, listen, you're going to be our punt return guy. Stay here. You've done everything we've asked. You're going to be our return guy. And boom, it pays off in one of the biggest games, a must-win game for Texas, Eric. And he has now shown that he can do it, which should send a big old jolt of confidence through that entire special teams group. He's been playing at an elite level. He's a great gunner. He's always down there to down a punt. He needs to just start catching some of those punts inside the 5. But your thoughts on his 75-yard punt return, for a guy who's played receiver, running back, defensive back, and now is back at receiver.
Yeah, Chip, again, I won't go too long. I'm going to cover a little bit of this in 4 downs, which will be out Wednesday morning. Again, we're taping this. We're taping this on October 14th. A little different from the live. I guess I should let the folks know we're going to go away from the live for a little bit. So there's that. But Chip, Ryan Niblett, you know, that is a testament to him. He was open about it in the post game, right? He spoke to him and said he thought about transferring, but the fact that he stuck it out. Chip, I don't begrudge players for transferring, especially we're probably trending towards a place in which you're going to have 5 years to play 5, right? So, you know, do what you got to do. Do you think that's going to put you in the best position to make the NFL or whatever it is your aspirations are? However, I think Ryan Niblett especially is a special case, Chip, because the dude said, hey, and yes, he was an athlete in high school, right? He played multiple positions. But he said, yeah, you need me to go play DB? I'll do it. Okay, wait, we're banged up at running back? Okay, I'll go there. You just don't get a lot of that anymore, Chip. And I'm not sitting here, you know, old man being a boomer saying, oh, man, you know, I wish, if my quarterback needed to go play offensive line, I'd ask my quarterback and he'd go line up and tackle. Like, I'm not saying that, but there is something really commendable about the aspect that Ryan Niblett, you only have so many years in college to do this. And when the team came to him and said, hey, we need you to switch positions, he just did it, right? So I wouldn't have begrudged him had he transferred. However, he stuck it out, and you can't help but feel good for a young man like that who gets an opportunity. And as you said, one of the biggest games of the year every year, and he'll go down and Red River Shootout lore until the end of time now.
Yeah, and now he's number 3 in the country in punt return yardage. He's averaging over 21 yards per punt return. That is a big boost to a special teams unit that needs a big boost. And Mason Shipley, real quickly, attempted a 55-yarder, hit the right upright. It was kind of coming back into the uprights. And then Steve Sarkisian attempted a 56-yarder. Mason Shipley didn't get his plant foot in the right spot. He didn't get all of that kick. But he did hit a 48-yarder, and Steve Sarkisian said, look, with this guy's range and ability, it might make me rethink the way we play some of the possessions in the opponent's end of the field. Quite a compliment for Mason Shipley, the kicker. All right, Eric, you ready for some take it or leave it?
Let's do it, Chip.
All right, who is serving first? Do we have scores from last week? We got all kinds of stuff.
We do, Chip. So last week the questions were: take the under in the Texas-Oklahoma game, take it or leave it. Both Chip and I took the under. Arch Manning will be Texas's leading rusher against Oklahoma. Chip left it. He was correct. I took it. He was wrong. And Texas will commit at least 6 penalties against Oklahoma on Saturday. Both of us left it. So Chip, 3-0 on the day. I was 2-1. So that brings our record to, I believe, both Chip and I were 1-2 the Florida game. There were some ones that couldn't be scored. So Chip should have a 2-score advantage over me. My quick math is correct. All right, take it or leave it. Number 1, I am serving to you. Arch Manning throws for 2 touchdowns and runs for another at Kentucky. Take it or leave it, Chip.
Ooh. So we have to take – so he has to do all 3 of these things. Is that what we're saying?
That is the way I'm interpreting the question, yes.
Okay. Then I'm going to leave this. I don't think he runs for a touchdown in this game. That could be dumb. That could be really dumb. But I'm going to leave this, Eric. I think Arch might throw for 3 touchdowns. But I don't see him running for a touchdown in this one. I'm going to leave this, Eric. What do you say?
All right. I, just for the sake of being just, differentiate a little bit, I'm going to take it because I can see some form of fashion Arch running for a touchdown. Now, that would require Texas to play red zone goal line football. And I think, quite frankly, with how bad Kentucky's defense has been, they may have some big play touchdowns, right? So maybe Arch will have to run for a 40-yarder. I don't know. It might not come in the form of, using his legs down there in the red zone on the goal line. But for the purpose of being different, I'm going to take it, Chip.
Okay. All right, take it or leave it. Number 2, Eric. The Longhorns hold Kentucky to 10 points or less. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, I'm going to take this, Chip. Kentucky's offense. I talked about the defense being ranked 97th in the nation, 96th in the nation. Their offense is ranked 94th in the nation, averaging 24 points per game. You take a look at their offensive output, as our guy Cole Park said, it has not been good. You take a look at them against SEC competition. They did push Ole Miss, but after that, it's been 13 points against South Carolina, 14 against Georgia. I do believe Texas's defense is better than both of those units, so I will take it, Chip.
Yeah, and Seth McGowan sounds iffy. I'm going to take this as well. Take it or leave it. Number 3.
Texas will commit at least, let's try this again. It would help if I inserted the right one. All right, here's the right one. I'm going to insert it, but I'm going to read it off to you, Chip. Texas runs the ball for 150 sack adjusted yards, Chip. Take it or leave it.
Woo! You know what? I'm going to leave. I don't know.
That's how I believe to me, Chip.
I don't know. You know what? I'm going to take this.
Of course he is.
I'm going to take. I heard that. Of course he is. Yeah, Kentucky don't have Deontay Walker anymore. So, yeah, Texas runs for 150 sack adjusted yards. I'm going to take this. Eric, what say you?
I said, of course he is, because I was getting ready to take it, and he was 85% of the way there with leave. So I was hoping for an opportunity to make up some ground, but I am going to take this, Chip. I do believe Texas runs for more than 150 sack adjusted yards. Again, for those, just quick refresher on sack adjusted, for those who don't know, that is excluding sack yards.
That's right. Excluding sacks. Yeah. All right. Eric, great stuff. Thanks to Cole Park for joining us from catspaws.com, our Kentucky site on the 24/7 network. And feel free to like and subscribe to the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel. That helps us grow. Who doesn't like growing? We all want to grow. And if you're not an annual member over at Horns 24/7, come on, treat yourself. Join the fun, the frivolity, and the information at horns247.com. Become an annual member so that you get VIP access to all the team sites on the preeminent 24/7 Sports Network and a lot of other perks too. Just trust me on that. All right, for Eric Henry, I am Chip Brown. Until next time, which is probably going to be after the Kentucky game. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Flagship Podcast. Stay safe and keep